This girl was abandoned by her two previous foster parents. Just when the third set of foster parents was about to gain custody, her biological father suddenly appeared. He immediately made it clear that he wouldn't give up on having custody of Natalie.
Not just to save other families from falling victim, but to encourage what's best for her. A life of honesty.
But when Natalie was about to speak, the judge seemed to admire what Mike had just said. He decided to reject Natalie's petition for a change in custody. At the same time, he would not alter her age either. This sudden turn of events shattered the girl's heart completely. She tore up the speech she had written overnight and gave up her right to have a normal life again, even though she was only 13 years old. The trial ended abruptly. To prevent Natalie from suffering any more harm, Cynthia decided not to appeal. Although Detective Lance hated the judicial unfairness, he was powerless. It wasn't until years later, when he adopted a girl, that he reignited his hope of saving Natalie. After going through a lot of files, Lance decided to visit Natalie's former doctor, Dr. Lawrence, and pulled out the discharge papers. It clearly stated that Natalie was perfectly normal. This meant Dr. Lawrence's testimony back then was false. However, he claimed that he had only relayed the opinions of other doctors. They had confirmed that Natalie was an adult. Lance asked him to write down the names of those doctors, and then he visited them one by one. But all the doctors said the same thing: Natalie was indeed a child.
You don't know, do you? She was re-aged.
Wait, what?
At that point, the truth started to emerge, but they still lacked one crucial piece of evidence, proof that the Christians had known that Natalie was a child back then. But how could they get them to admit that? Then Lance learned that the Christians had divorced. Mike had returned to the US and was now being falsely accused of domestic violence, which caused him to lose custody of his children. This made him decide to help Lance. He revealed that the Christians had abused Natalie. The purpose of the abuse was to force Natalie to admit that she was an adult.
She was obsessed. She, convinced that Natalia was an adult. And this was the time when doctors were already telling us she was probably 8 or 9.
Mike thought that helping expose his ex-wife's abuse would get him custody of his children back. But when his ex-wife reminded him, he realized that if the abuse charges were proven true, he would be an accomplice. So he had no choice but to side with Christine again.
Deirdre thinks that our case is win or lose, based on how the public feels about us. And that folks just love a good American family.
Thus, the media war, which would go down in history, officially began.
I didn't want to admit it at that time, that my husband and I were struggling.
It was 2014. We'd been in Canada almost a year.
This was 2010. I had just discovered Natalia's hair.
It was 2012. She stole my son's toy car and...
2012. She tried to pull me into an electric fence. My coffee, it poisoned me.
Around 2012. Around 2011 or so. 2012.
2010.
That was 2012.
It was 2009. Monster.
Killer.
A sociopath.
Con artist.